Yins guys, thank you for listening to the Bridge to Buctober podcast, where we talk all about them Pittsburgh Pirates and that. Today is November 21st. The 40-man roster has been shaken up a little bit this week, and the deadline for protecting Rule 5 eligible players has come and gone. MVP awards and all those awards have been given out, and we are joined today by EthanHullihen. If you guys are not familiar with that name, that's because you haven't been listening, because I've been talking about his stuff a little bit here. So before we get to him, Jake, how you doing?
I've been a busy week this week. Put in about 50 hours of work at work this week. I got moved into a sales position a little over a year ago, went to the desk, had to go back out to the shop floor this past week, and let's just say I've become an indoor dog.
Yeah.
Whole body was sore after a few days. Other than that, it's been a nice week, good week for me, and I'm just excited to get started on some good old roster talk this week.
I have began, and if you listened and knew that I hate snow, I began starting to wear like the base layer pants for just everyday living. I put on my khakis, I just put on the base layers first because I'm freezing cold.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's say hi to Ethan. Ethan, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me.
We've been talking about all the 40-man roster stuff and the Rule 5 protections and all of those things. Friday, all that happened, all of the discussions that we've been having and whatever conversations where we try to predict things and we're always wrong. And so that all kind of came to pass this week. But you've heard me talk about where I'm getting this information of who's Rule 5 eligible. It's because of Ethan, because he has a spreadsheet out there that basically breaks it down for the next, 5 years?
Every single player for it's to 2027, I think. 25. It's 2025, but every player in the system.
That's awesome. There is a lot of information, and we'll get into that. But first, Ethan, before we even get started, everybody can find you. I've shared your Twitter a few times. EthanHullihen, Hullihen. Did I nail it?
Yes.
I nailed it. Sweet.
Yes, just like patches and dodgeball.
All right, there we go.
Or if you're a MASH fan, not me, but
I got you. And then also, where else can we find your work?
Pittsburgh Baseball Network. I contribute to the No Quarter blog there. So I started out at the Point of Pittsburgh. If you ever read that, that was a very nice site that I miss. Then I jumped over to what was Pirates Prospects, and they've kind of branched out a little bit, but I contribute to the No Quarter blog, the free blog, so you don't have to subscribe to read what I do there.
Very good.
Nice.
And there was you just put out, I mean, guys, if anybody out there thinks like, wow, they're getting way too deep into these things, no, we're not. Trust me, we're really not. He just what was it, yesterday morning, right? Just released an article.
Yeah.
About
because Friday night I wrote it.
Yeah, about the AAA reserve list. So it doesn't stop with this. There's a lot. So we'll actually link that in our show notes and everything, so you guys can go check that out. But it may or may not come up. So check it out. There's a lot of information. This guy is way smarter than we are when it comes to rosters and stuff. So
it is truly a passion. I don't know why. I just really like it.
I think it would have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know the time that I put into looking stuff up, and I'm not even, chipping the iceberg, I guess they say, to the information that's out there. So that's cool.
That's why I'm here.
That's right. That's exactly why. Yep. And he's going to be here for us the whole time. So I don't know how much you pay attention to all of the league, but we will maybe get into, here we go. We will get into all the awards that came out this week. So we're going to kind of zip through this. Last week we spent way too much time going over this stuff. And we understand that, but that's kind of how we are. So Cy Young Awards, Corbin Burns from Milwaukee, AL Robbie Ray. And that's not a surprise, except maybe for Jake. Because we
Yeah, I
did
got
do
a big
guesses.
goose
Ethan,
egg.
did you care about any of this? Do you pay
I
attention?
pay attention, and it's more the philosophy behind it that I would care about than the actual player. But I know who was up for the award, and
Right.
I bet that not a whole lot past that. But
So do you do any kind of like, oh, I think it'll be this guy, or
no,
you know,
no.
you just don't care
I
ahead
pay
of time.
I-
Ahead
I-
of time. You don't care ahead of time. You just wait for the result.
Yeah.
That's good. So I don't know why we think that we need to pick everything all the time, but we just do it for the fun of it. But
Yeah.
that's cool. And anything stick out there? Burns and Ray. I mean, I think that was pretty.
I think they were both deserving. I don't know. With what Max Scherzer was able to do for literally both teams was just he did a lot. And I mean, not that Corbin Burns didn't do a lot,
Yep.
but it is what it
Was
is.
Scherzer third?
I think
I
he
didn't
was.
even look at the.
Yeah.
I don't. I know it was. I know the discussion was Wheeler versus Burns, but I didn't
Yeah.
know if.
Yeah. I don't know as far
and-
as the points go, because you get like first place, second place, third place. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think Scherzer may have had a few. I don't remember. I don't actually remember at all. So before I say anything, I'm just going to.
I don't think there was an undeserving. If he was the third, I don't think there was an undeserving candidate there. So
Right.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So Rookie of the Year went to Jonathan India, Randy Arozarena, which is no surprise. Jake, you were on the fence about Garcia and Arozarena, so that's that's kind of even there.
Yeah.
Manager of the Year, Gabe Kapler, and Kevin Cash. You nailed that one. I actually thought it wasn't going to go to him this time around, but that's fine too.
Yeah.
And MVP, Bryce Harper, Shohei Ohtani, absolutely zero surprises. Ethan, what's your take on Shohei Ohtani?
I think what he's doing is awesome. I mean, he's probably a second tier starting pitcher as far as the best of the best, but I mean, to be able to do both as
Right.
well as he does is amazing.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I even still think offensively, I'm still on Guerrero as being better than Ohtani this season, right? But, Guerrero didn't pitch. So, and pitch effectively.
That absolutely has to be taken into effect. But then I've seen the question of, well, if he does the same thing next year, is it just his in perpetuity? Or how badly does he have to pitch or hit to take away from
Right.
the other?
So I actually mentioned this last week, and to me, he's done it once. Yes, it's still valuable to be able to do, but he's already done it. We all get it. I don't think it holds as much weight next year moving forward.
Well, I don't know if you guys pay attention to the NBA at all. I haven't for a little bit. But it reminds me of Russell Westbrook. He averaged a triple-double like 3 years in a row, and then the second and the third, it was like, oh, ho-hum, it doesn't matter anymore.
That's what he does.
That's kind of what
That's what he does.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's just kind of reminds me of.
I think of,
makes a
and
lot
I
of
know
sense.
it's not the pitching thing, but I think of, Mike Trout and what he did several years in a row. And he was always in the conversation. He didn't always win MVP.
Right.
So I wonder if that still isn't taken into consideration. But I think if this year is next year, I wonder if Vladimir Guerrero doesn't win it. You know what I mean?
There's definitely such thing as voter fatigue, or just kind of, well, I'm expecting it now, so it's not, we kind of take it for the performance for granted. Next year, we'll be, well, what's the next new thing?
Right.
Which is a shame. I mean, because you think back to somebody like, however you felt about him anyway, but Barry Bonds, it was like he probably should have won MVP every single year, but it was like, we don't feel like voting for him this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard because with a lot of these things, you can look back over and say, like, well, historically, this has happened, but like we don't have any idea because this has never happened.
So since Babe Ruth, probably.
But even Babe Ruth, even the comps with Babe Ruth, he never did it at the same time. Some would say he could have, but he never did. Like the Yankees were like, "Nah, we're not going to pitch. We're not going to have you pitch."
I think his last couple of years in Boston, he did both.
But still, like, not very much. So that was the year. His last year in Boston, he had 29 home runs. He led all of baseball. He had more home runs than any other team.
All of baseball.
Yeah.
Or probably just every single player in baseball.
No other team had 29 home runs that year except for him. and he was a great pitcher. But it's just hard. It's hard to make those comps. Pitching was very different. You know what I mean? You were expected to go 9 innings, and so you didn't throw 100 in the first inning. You know what I mean? It wasn't in the cards. So it's really hard to even compare that sort of thing with what we see today. It's crazy.
And it's not like this is, I'm sorry. It's not like Ohtani, this is his first year doing it. It's just the first year where it's all came together.
Yeah.
That he's done both, and he's done both in exceptional level. So I absolutely think he was deserving.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's just a shame that the Angels can't seem to figure it out. that they have a generational player and now coming upon a second one, and it's what in the world's going on there?
Yeah.
and not to mention you signed Anthony Rendon in the middle of that.
Yeah, and I don't think the Thor the Noah Syndergaard signing is what they're hoping it's going to be, but we shall see. But
man, it's like the opposite of Cleveland, right? Or yeah, because they're all pitching, no offense. And then you got LA, who's all offense, no pitching. Other than like Ohtani still pitched well, but it's crazy that they continue to have bad luck with pitching.
Which is why I think it's not his fault. He still was deserving of MVP. It's not his fault that the pitching was awful.
Yeah,
or that they suffer. I think they had a lot of injuries in their pitching staff, but that they just can't seem to figure it out. So I hope, because I hate to see someone as great as like Trout not get the love he deserves because his team is so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that when you get to a place where you're above and beyond, which obviously all 3 of the final candidates were above and beyond. Actually, all 6, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't a single MVP candidate this year where his team went to the playoffs, which is outrageous. Because I still think that so long as it's called the Most Valuable Player Award, there are voters who will vote for value.
Mm-hmm.
But this year it truly was a most outstanding player because and everybody there, their numbers back it up.
Yep.
So it's hard to argue any of them. So pretty crazy. Well, I said we were going to zip through it. I'm done. Are we done? Is that it?
I think
all right.
Hey, I'm here to talk Pirates.
That's right. So let's get into all of the things that happened on Friday and even more. So first things first. Right before we connected here, the Pirates just signed Jose Quintana, reportedly, right, to a 1-year deal for $2 million. And that name, if that name sounds familiar, it's because we wanted him in a trade some years ago when we were in the middle of I don't know if that was the same year that we brought in Archer or if that was was one. Yeah, I think it was like, oh, we wanted Quintana, you brought in Archer.
He was traded in 2017.
So what was Archer?
18, wasn't he?
Yeah, maybe.
But because I think Quintana was one of those like, well, it has to start with Glasnow and Bell at that time. Because, I mean, if you remember, he was traded for who? Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez. So that was a big deal. That was still when teams were trading their top prospects.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that never obviously came to pass.
Clear, it was 2018. So yeah, that was the year after.
No, he was definitely a wanted target amongst many fans.
Yeah.
Too little, too late, though, probably.
Yeah. Well, and just to that point, I'm not sure it would have been much different than what we saw in the Archer deal. He wasn't. I mean, he was very
solid for Chicago. I don't think he was ever kind of what they hoped he would be, but
right.
He was very solid.
It definitely would have been better than Archer.
Yeah, that's true.
Wouldn't have taken a whole lot.
That's very true. I guess I just mean we would have been like getting rid of the same type of players. You know what I mean? Like it would have been a big deal. And imagine not having Josh Bell if he was part of that. And
if memory serves me, I think that was kind of the idea. And Eloy Jimenez was a top 5 prospect at that point, I think.
oh yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's mega. You know what I mean? I mean, look at what he's already done.
Mm-hmm.
So Josh Bell doesn't compare to that.
But I mean, as far as right now today, I'm getting kind of Trevor Cahill vibes. You know, Cahill was a half starter, half bullpen for the past couple of years, and Quintana just now, in 2021 and 2020, was kind of moved to the pen a little bit, and so it's kind of like, well, we might throw you a bone, let you start, come here, you know, almost the same amount of money as Cahill. We know how that worked out. You know, they're not necessarily the same people, but one can hope it works out a little better. But
one name comes to mind in this though, and that's Francisco Liriano. Same sort of situation, has gotten out of his good years, was moving back and forth between starter and reliever. I know we don't have Uncle Ray working his magic that he did for those few years. However,
Liriano had to be younger at the time.
I don't know, because, well, and if he was, I mean, Liriano may have also came up at a different time too, because I kind of remember he had kind of fallen out of his ways, and maybe the White Sox tie as well.
This is going to be Quintana's age 33 season. I know he's durable, or he has proven to be in the past, but they just have him avoid the bullpen steps.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking here. I'm pulling up Liriano just to see. He came to Pittsburgh. Yeah, he was definitely younger. Age 29 season. He came up. First full season looks like age 22.
The Twins, right?
Yeah, he came up with Minnesota. But it is kind of, I mean, Quintana didn't have the success that Liriano did early on. I mean, it always felt like he was going to.
Yeah.
But like he wasn't getting Cy Young votes. He had one All-Star appearance, and Liriano, I believe, had more than that. But Liriano came up at 23. So if you consider, you know, the amount of service time, it's 2 years different. So still, it's like a year off as far as his tenure in Major League Baseball. So their paths have been similar, just like 1 year different.
Yeah.
With his first full season being 23, I guess first full season being 22, even though Liriano made his debut at 21. So really, maybe even 1 or 2 years different. But it does kind of give me that vibe anyway. A lefty, you know what I mean? Just like a guy who started, was supposed to be legit good, was for a while, and then kind of fell out of it. And it does kind of just feel like that. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Liriano by any stretch of the imagination, but it would be non-surprising to have a former good pitcher end up being something. You certainly didn't get that out of Cahill last year, even though you kind of crossed your fingers and hoped for it. Mm-hmm. But I think $2 million, this is an easy 1 year. 1 year deals are never bad. 1 year deals for $2 million are certainly never bad. It's just like there's no risk involved in a $2 million deal.
No, but there's not really. But if this is the move, which of course you don't know, you know.
Right.
But if so, well, this is because they need starting pitching, and if this is like, well, this is what we're going to go with, then that's probably would be the main issue.
That would be, that would be bad if he's the. Hopefully, this is just a way. I mean, like in my opinion, and it'd be interesting to see where you are on this, but we've got to figure out a way to get Bonda and Cody Ponce off the roster. So if this is how we can do that, we've got a couple more. We also need a catcher. So speaking of needing a catcher, we did designate Michael Perez for assignment in the moves to get our 40-man. So the guys that were protected, if we can move into that, Liover Peguero, Canaan Smith-Njigba, Jack Suwinski, and Travis Swaggerty. As if it matters what we guessed, we did not see Suwinski coming. That one was interesting. And then the only ones that really, from our discussion, the only ones that aren't on there are Thomas and Martin, in which we said, like, Mason Martin was as a fan, you wanted him because of the power, but realistically, probably not somebody anybody's going to pick up. But I'd like to get Jake. I'd like to hear you on Suwinski here. What do you think?
I mean, he's a solid player, but I didn't think that he was as important to protect as Martin or Thomas. I mean, Thomas, you got a flamethrower. Anybody can hide him in their bullpen. That's almost an easy pickup.
Yeah, I think that too. I mean, just like we did with Oviedo. I mean, I think that's a pretty easy thing to. I can give him 35 innings and then stretch him out again after that.
If anyone is picked up, in my opinion, it's Thomas.
I'm there too.
Yeah.
I was doing a little digging today before in the afternoon when my daughter was sleeping, and he is. I prefer Fangraphs. I like what they do, and he's the only. I found two. He was one of the only 50 future value players. He was the highest top 100, one of two top 100 prospects, unprotected, and like you said, Oviedo. If he could easily get that treatment, in my opinion. I would not be surprised. One, if he's taken, and that's not necessary. It's harder to stick. That's a big deal. But I could see, him taking the Oviedo route, and here's an inning here, inning there, long IL stint, and we figured it out. We stitched together a season, go back down to the minors.
Fake an injury. You only need 90 days, right?
Yes. And I mean, though I know I write for an adjacent prospect site, and I do not fancy myself a prospect evaluator, but if you would ask me, hey, who's a top 10 prospect that you're not sold on, he would be one of them. I don't know if he's going to put it all together, but I can at least understand, hey, if you're trying to protect the people who are more likely to be taken, he would have been, as you said on your I made a prediction. I had 5. Omar Cruz was my 4th, not Suwinski, and then I was very torn on Thomas, but I did end up, because I thought if anyone, he's going to be selected. So that's kind of surprising. But we can talk about Martin too. I know Martin's a very polarizing topic.
Yeah. So as we said last week, the risk is the only thing that worries me. I just can't see somebody drafting him, but I also am curious, do we really have much else as far as like that sort of power and that at first base or anyone at first base that really looks like they're on their way? I mean, Colin Moran is almost out of here. And if we sign Yoshi, then we're right back to the same thing we've been dealing with for years, and that's having a statue who, I mean, I do not have a popular opinion on Yoshi. I'm not sold. I think it was lightning in a bottle. But we're not talking about Yoshi right now.
And that is true. He is next in line, but is it really a risk if the chances are so low that it's not likely going to happen? Like, I've never been on an airplane. I don't like the idea of it. But if I said, "Oh, I'm afraid this airplane's going to crash," most likely it's not going to. You know what I mean? And you got to plan based on what actually will happen. And first basemen are not taken in the Rule 5 draft. I don't know what it's pitchers because they're easy to hide. It's outfielders, some middle infielders next, corner infielders and catchers. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
And I was looking, Jason Mackey midweek. He was like, I would be shocked if Mason Martin, and I replied to him. I said, no, he's not going to get protected. And I looked back, and it was something like 4 first basemen since 2010 have been selected. And
are any of them notable?
Jimon Choi was one of them.
That's right.
And then Jason actually ran with it, and he looked into it some more and changed his tune.
That's good.
Who was it? Oh, dang it!
I do remember G-Man Choi.
think he was the last one.
Yeah, and that's why I remember that one, because he was the last one selected.
But it's
The
just there's just no
strikeouts,
precedent there.
yeah. So most of the time, especially first baseman, that's interesting that you even say corner infield, because that actually surprised me a little bit. And I may have been surprised at catcher, because I think a lot of people with a backup catcher are totally fine having a non-offensive catcher whose defensive skills are good enough for every fifth day.
I think
of
it's
a
just
catcher.
I think it's just harder to hold a catcher.
Yeah.
Not the Twins, the Padres a couple years back, I think they had 3 Rule 5 guys on their team, and 2 of them, one of them was a catcher. There might even have been another one. It's Luis Torrens. I think he was in that.
Yeah.
He was in that big trade. Why can't I think of who was the Ostanola? I think. They ended up keeping him the whole year, but it doesn't, because your backup catcher, I think, is expected to be used more than what you would, again, like a Luis Oviedo. So it just doesn't. Yeah.
For some reason, we didn't use him, but
but if you're starting 2 or 3 times a day, do you really want a single A catcher who's
right,
who isn't ready?
It would have to be a weird scenario for it to be a catcher. It would have to be a guy who's really on the edge, but is older.
Yeah, and Mason Martin just doesn't fit that profile. He's first base only. He can't do anything else. He has a lot of trouble with Ks. And yes, he has prodigious power, but and other people talk about this, but there's only 2 players who have even been close to being successful with his K rates, and it's Joey Gallo and Javier Baez. And it's just, yes, strikeouts are more accepted now, but you can't strike out so much, in that he doesn't walk enough is his issue. He doesn't get on base enough to make up for those K problems.
Yeah. So there's obvious development there. I just think without the versatility, I don't know if you're a guy who strikes out a lot, will strike out even more if he doesn't have consistent playing time. So that's the big thing. I don't know how you hide a first base only guy on an active roster when his Achilles heel is strikeouts. I just don't think it can happen. However, I'm going to be super bummed if he gets picked. If there's a GM out there who says, guys, we're only going to play half of a season anyway because of lockout. If they know that sort of thing, they may say, we could do this. Now, crossing my fingers, we play more than half of a season next year, but that would be the only situation that I could see somebody saying, I only have to hide him for 60 games next year because of the lockout. If they really believe, and here's the thing, if they take that waiver and we get kicked off in March, spring training's heading out, and we're going to have a full 162, then there's a chance they send him back at some point. But why wouldn't you take that shot if you believe that there's a short season, if you think that the power will eventually be there? I made the comp to like a Pedro Alvarez. If he can even get his strikeouts to that point, he's still going to be super effective on a team. And at first base, his defense will be a little bit better than Pedro's was, because he was in the middle of the throwing issue.
And I fully expect a universal DH, and that might help a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm still not seeing it. And if someone does it and he sticks, that's just, you gambled and you lost. But like I said earlier, is it really a gamble if your chances are so infinitesimal that it's not likely to happen?
Yeah. It's a good point. I like Mason Martin as a fan, but if I was calling shots, I wouldn't have protected him. But as a fan, it's just one of those things. You wanted it, right? Because we don't have power. It's non-existent. Right. On Jack Suwinski, the only thing I can imagine, and this is basically, maybe this is a question of Suwinski versus Cal Mitchell. And I don't know. But the only thing I can imagine is that we know the guys that are close, which I would say Mason Martin is not coming up next year unless there's a monumental change in his game, which has happened, but it would have to be huge. It would have to be K's down, walks up kind of a thing. But with the outfield situation, I mean, I know, Jake, you're gonna laugh at this, but I'd put just about any of those guys in front of Anthony Alford. I'm done. That's just where I'm at. But anyway,
I wonder. I was very surprised about Suwinski, and I cut Mitchell out of my projection because the three outfielders, I just wasn't seeing it, and I definitely saw sending Smith-Njigba to the AFL. I thought, okay, that's showing some belief in him, and Swaggerty was whenever he got injured for the whole season, I kind of was like, oh, there's at least a possibility, but he was kind of a no-brainer selection, and then just thought, I just don't see a third outfielder. And one has to wonder if Mitchell, was a Huntington guy, Suwinski's a Charrington guy. Does that make any difference? It might,
100%.
Yeah.
And it's just, did they know something about Suwinski that no one else does? Which, of course, they do. They know a whole lot more than we do. But it's just, is there something they're seeing that that they're very invested in and believe in? And because I mean, the whole other group was moved up to AAA at the end of the year. He was not. So I think he'll start out still in AA because the AAA outfield's pretty full right now. Swaggerty, Smith, and Njigba and Mitchell.
Which would be a good reason not to. That would be a good reason not to move him up, because you wouldn't want to give him AAA innings and then start next year back at AA. And if they knew they were going to do that, I would assume, hey, let's not give him this so that he knows where he's at. I guess I don't really know. It could have just been that there's like 40-11 outfielders in AAA right now. And
yeah,
it was definitely a surprise, but there's always one name. Way back when it was Davidas Neverauskas, I can remember that. Like,
yeah,
there's always somebody that you don't expect. But I did not think, some fans were like, oh, it's gonna be 10 players. That doesn't make any sense.
No,
yeah, you can't have a quarter of your roster unplayable.
Right.
And I went through this on Twitter, and it's just a philosophical thing. The Rule 5 draft is overhyped a lot, and it's just something that I love it too, but it's not actually something that's important. You don't lose good players, especially whenever they moved the rule. They used to be a year or less that you had to protect a player, so then the talent was less, and now it's just you kind of know by 4 and 5 years who you do and don't want. And it's just, and Charrington has made a couple of comments to this, as far as it's not necessarily who you think is most, who you like the best. It's who do we have the most chance to lose. And you're trying to stretch your 40 spots because and I said this again on Twitter, it's if you protect Mason Martin, you only have Mason Martin. But if you don't protect Mason Martin and he's not getting taken, but then you drop the filler that everyone's mad about, you bring in somebody else, whether it's Quintana or another free agent or another waiver pickup who has another Rule 5 pick. You have that spot and Mason Martin. So now you have two players in one spot.
Yep.
So that's the Charrington said, we're trying to do the most with our 40 spots, and that's the example. So it's you're trying just to get as many good players as you can, and protecting too many of them. You got between Cruz and Contreras and Oviedo, the names that are already there that who aren't starting the year, you add too many of them, and it's who plays on March 31st. So it's a juggling act. So
yeah, and any injuries, you're going to ask somebody who's not ready to come up and play innings, and then you have the other situation where you bring up a guy too early, you could hurt them. I've said before, I wonder if Cole Tucker's debut came so early that we ruined all possibility of having the Cole Tucker we all wanted to have.
Yeah, and
but anyway,
that plays. Cole Tucker could be making a turnaround, but
Reynolds came up the same day. I mean, if you're good, you're good. If you're ready, you're ready.
But Reynolds was there, though, right? I mean, Reynolds was further along in his. You know what I mean? I get that. Reynolds, I feel like, was ready. He just wasn't the one we were talking about.
And there's definitely something to it, as far as as needing those reps, and the minors are there for a reason. And that's another even thing to think about in Rule 5. You know, a lot of people see a pick as hurting a player, because instead of Mason Martin getting those reps in AAA, figuring out how to not strike out, you're sitting on the major league bench wasting away. So
making a lot more money.
But no, it's definitely good for the player.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it doesn't even help that, it helps in perpetuity. You know, now you have that service time. Now you have a higher platform here. It doesn't hurt. That's for sure. But on that side of it, you know, the development side, definitely. But
and who's the greatest Rule 5 pick ever?
Roberto Clemente. I'm sure
Clemente, 1954.
Oh no, it's Dan Uggla.
Yeah.
Or Johan Santana.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Suwinski thing is definitely, in my opinion, it's Sherrington. He went after him. So is the rub. I was thinking of this the other day. With all of those players, Diego Castillo, Jack Suwinski, Canaan Smith-Njigba, Liover Peguero, the list of those guys. Actually, even more than that, right? The list of those guys that Sherrington has acquired in these recent years, who were coming up in this Rule 5 eligibility, is that maybe the rub, as in Neil Huntington's rub was always getting those guys that were supposedly close, like Colin Moran and Michael Feliz and even Joe Musgrove, those guys that were just breaking in. And it was like, we already know who they are, though. The upside is gone. Like, you know who they are. And that was kind of the rub that he kept trying to get. Now, it worked out with Brian Reynolds. They got him, and they said, he's close. He's here. And he's really the exception to all of those guys that was, I mean, Colin Moran's been there, but he's not been what Brian Reynolds has been. You know what I mean? He's not been what we traded away.
There's certainly not a downside to having too much talent and too many good players, but something that at some point, or even what you would have liked to see, is maybe, well, you know, you package Kyle Mitchell and a couple of the other players who extra and try to get, you know, a cost-controlled younger player, you know, ship out some of the extra that you have for something that you can use now. But maybe somewhere down the line that happens. But
so Omar Cruz, you brought up Omar Cruz as one of your guys that you actually had written down. We talked about him, but not at much length. Do you see him as a possibility of anybody actually taking him? I mean, pitching to me is way easier to take than anything else. But do you think that that's even a possibility?
No, you always lean the pitcher. You know, if you're trying to protect the two, you would lean towards keeping the pitcher. But I don't know if the upside's there to be, you know, he's just a solid someone who's going to come up and just, if he comes up, you know,
right.
He might even end up in the bullpen. I don't know if he's a guy who would project long term as a starter, but I think I kind of included him because of his proximity to the majors, the likelihood that he'll probably contribute at some point this year, and just kind of wanting to keep him around because he's a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't necessarily shocked. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily shocked though that he wasn't protected. I think he's one of the ones that, you know, you don't want to. We won't risk losing being selected if he wasn't protected.
Yeah.
I'm still going with Thomas there. That's
exactly where I'm at too. I just think that he's the easiest one to take and not look back. The other thing is I mean, there's just not very many guys that are picked in the first place. But also, like, you're not going to, if we were that good, that, you know what I mean, then teams maybe would have been, I don't think that we're in danger of losing more than one guy when it comes down to how many rounds do you think this thing even goes? You know what I mean?
Well, everyone gets a chance to pick until everyone's gone or done picking.
Right.
I want to say it went into round 4 or 5 last year and 2 teams were left. I could be wrong on that. I think it was 18 players total it was 14 or 18.
Could you imagine?
I don't remember which.
Could you imagine drafting 4 guys though?
That would be. I mean, that would be. I don't remember what team it was.
You would have to be in a rough spot on your roster, I would think. Either that, or you're just loaded at the major league level and nobody after that. I mean, I just can't imagine having those. Well, you couldn't even be that because then you're taking guys to play at the major league level. I mean, it's got to be what, Baltimore. You know what I mean?
Arizona.
Not even Arizona because I think
it went into round 6.
Yikes!
The Reds kept picking. No, oh wait, is this? That was the AAA phase. See, and I'm the one who wrote about it. The rule for the major league was 2 rounds. The Orioles and the A's made 2 picks.
Okay, so okay, that makes more sense. And I figured Baltimore would be on that list, but
yeah. No, I remember because I remember following it, and the Pirates made 2 selections, I think, in the AAA phase. So I was like, yes, keep picking more players. Actually, no, they made 3 picks. And that's just good fun.
Yeah. So those are all the players that like the average fan will probably never hear about, or at least not for some years.
No, I've read that the scouts make their real money because you're literally just picking up a free player.
Yeah.
And that's where, if the scouts are doing their job and finding that. I mean, Shea Spitzbarth, he made. I was kind of surprised that he was one of the first to go. I kind of thought he had a chance to. Now, I mean, he's very fungible. You can probably find many just like him, but I was kind of surprised that he didn't stick around. But he was their first pick in the minor league phase. So you got to find talent from everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing too that I think is. Kind of confusing at times, but we can look at numbers all day long, and there are other people who are actually watching these people pitch, watching these guys hit, watch them work. Obviously, they know more than we do when they get to see the player. We just don't get that. We don't get that ability. Even if we could watch every game, we don't see how they work out. We don't see, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things. Oh, he's doing this to work on this. Or maybe, no, this guy thinks he's pro ready, so he's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? Those sort of things. And you just don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that makes it that much more confusing. Like you said, the things about Tanaj Thomas and his numbers this year, it just didn't look good. And so there's a lot of question marks there. But you also don't know if he had 17 blisters this season that he was dealing with, or, you know what I mean? There's like those things sometimes don't come up if they're trying not to bring them up. I don't know. And how much of this too is, do you think there's any kind of gamesmanship on whether or not they make a decision on a guy to either, let's say, I mean, this is all hypothetical and certainly not in line with what we see, but let's say Suwinski surprised us all because we thought this is a waste. Maybe, do you think there would ever be oh no, we're super high on this, in order to say, well, that way, if we include them in a trade, they think we're high on this guy. Maybe they'll see something that.
I don't know. I mean? That's pretty galaxy brain thinking there. I mean, I think actions definitely speak louder in this scenario. Like, that maybe that they just don't see something in Mason Martin that all the fans do, or maybe they definitely see something in Jack, because they have now committed to him,
Yeah.
Or I mean, this is a guy we might be talking about, but the Yankees designated Clint Frazier to make room for someone else. It's that action is needed, and this is actions speak louder, and we have done this, and this is the horse we've picked to win, and maybe they just aren't that high on Tanaj Thomas, and for the reason you said, that they're watching him pitch every day. And that's probably something that they know that we don't, and that's why I try never to look at it from the this is what I think should happen, and so it should have happened.
Right.
I don't know anything.
That's well, right.
Well, I know how many options a player has.
Yeah.
I know how much service a player has.
But yeah, when it gets to that, I mean, That is true. I mean, if you remember some years ago, we had Archimedes Caminero. He could throw 100, but for whatever reason, his 100 got hit every time. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, so what? He can throw 100. If they don't see the other pitches or they don't see certain things, then absolutely this could be them saying, hey, if we miss out on this guy, we're okay with that. Even if he blows up, we're okay with that because we have other things. I mean, obviously there were guys that we expected to see. I was surprised to see Michael Perez designated rather than some of the pitching that we have that I just don't know that is going to be part of the team next year. But there's hopefully, I mean, Quintana was picked up today. Somebody's gone, tonight or tomorrow, right? So they still have to, there's still spots to be cleared. Had we released all of the guys that we thought weren't going to be a part of it and protected a bunch of guys, then we would be strapped and you wouldn't be able to pick anybody up. And so, goes back to what you were saying about you could have Mason Martin and the other guy. So same thing, you know what I mean? I'm there. I'm surprised.
And I think Perez is interesting in that you weren't going to go into 2021 with Miguel. I always call him Miguel. Now he's gone. I don't have to make that mistake. Michael Perez.
Maybe.
There is a Miguel Perez somewhere. But, so now what I think now you see is your backup catcher for next year is an NRI. I think that's what's going to happen, that you're going to have that 40-man spot for the whole offseason. And then Blake Cederling goes on the IL, whatever happens in late February, early March. And then your backup catcher is going to be a Luke Maile, a John Ryan Murphy. I think that's what you're going to see. Instead of just, you're keeping that 40-man spot warm all off season, and then you'll just find a backup catcher at a later date. That's my opinion, but
no, that's good because I hadn't thought of that. I was kind of thinking like, okay, well, who are they going to go get now? I really thought that, we understand Michael Perez and how he did at the plate and whatnot, but I just felt like that's kind of what you get out of a backup catcher anyway. And so I didn't have a problem hanging on to him, but at the same time, that's actually a really good point because then you never have to worry about that 40-man spot for that position until you get into season. And then once again, you've got guys on the injured list that then clear up that spot automatically. So
I could be wrong, but that's just how I see it playing
that would make sense.
Yeah.
So I actually in my notes here, I actually have a thing that says, do you feel like this is overhyped? But yeah, you've already said that. So, me and Jake were talking about that. We're going to talk about this the whole time. And really it's just because this is what we're talking about right now. Right. You know what I mean? And it's like,
and I wrote this in my piece. It's whenever you have a team like the Pirates who we follow that nothing happens, you gotta look for the times when something's going to happen. And I love transactions so much, and this is a forced, you have to do this. Yeah. And the actual importance versus the attention paid to it is not equal in the least. Like there's nothing very little of what, except for the big, if you didn't protect Peguero or something, but the lesser decisions, people or fans were upset about Eric Wood years ago, and he's playing in Korea now, and I don't know, I think he's punching teammates if I'm not mistaken. You can look that up, but like I think there is a story about Eric Wood, something like that, but it's not important. And it's fun to talk about, and trust me, I have a spreadsheet tracking it all, but it's just as the functional importance of it is not where the attention is paid.
Yeah, and
equal.
I think sometimes we have more fun talking ahead of time. That if we would have waited for this,
what happens next is always more important than what is it.
Yeah,
what's going
there's
on
a lot less. I mean, so the Suwinski thing did come as a surprise. I didn't think that we would have any surprises of extra guys, especially when, and I listen to a lot of other people talk about the Pirates too. And I don't think anybody had Jack Suwinski on their list. So that actually is interesting. But like you said before, sometimes there are 10 guys on people's lists. And it's like, so there was not going to be any surprises on, I didn't think there would be any surprises on who would make it. It would be more or less who didn't make it, right? So it's kind of interesting. However, there's still a lot less to talk about after the fact, because it really, when it comes out, you're like, yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of like, what are we going to talk about now? We talk about Jack Suwinski for 40 minutes, you know what I mean? And it's, yeah. I hope that, I'm just still looking at everything. I hope that Swaggerty picks up where he left off. It looked like he was on his way to making his debut last year. What it looked like spring training early on, I know it was very short. So it's kind of hard to really, we didn't have anything to get excited about as far as, one, outfield, and two, on our AAA roster. So he was it. So I just paid more attention to him, I think.
I try to keep emotion and personal feelings out of evaluation, and it just is not for me. But always feel very sad for whenever a player gets injured. It's just got to be awful. I mean, you only have a finite number of games you're going to play in your career, and it's short-lived. And I mean, heck, even just me as a high school athlete, if I missed one game, it was, well, I only know I got 24 of these a year for 4 years, and then it's done. And what am I, and so to miss a whole year what Swaggerty played 7 games, it's just got to be just so defeating, and to not let that, affect you, and not, I mean, just from the human perspective, but just from the team perspective too, it's just, he's lost that year of development, and he's now a year older, and it's just, it stinks all around.
Yeah. Now we're a fan pod here. You're speaking our language right now. We are all about having fan picks and going with the gut and the heart. We like to be a fan of guys. So
I am not a fan in that sense of the word at all. Not me. I want to say what I want to backtrack a little. I can't find anything on Eric Wood punching a teammate, so I do not want to besmirch Eric Wood in the least.
Eric Wood might be a fine gentleman.
I'm gonna retract that statement for now. I am gonna look into it, but Eric Wood, I apologize if you're listening and you did not do that.
I love it.
But if I find it after this, then I will follow up with a tweet or something and say, I was right. But there was some kind of crazy Eric Wood news. I know there was.
That's good.
But
so
carry on. What's next?
Yeah, we will not get into the AAA portion of it. That's a pretty deep thing. Like I said, I will link the article there, because it's definitely, I mean, I read the article, and it's definitely interesting to read all of these things. I don't pretend that I'm going to remember a lot of it, but that's why it's written down. So we'll be able to go back to that.
Well, I only do something like that because I saw a prominent media member in the Pittsburgh market commenting on one of his stories saying, well, you wouldn't want to lose Taynaj Thomas in the AAA portion of it. And it's like, that's not how it works. So
it'll still be, yeah. So also, I just want to, we talk about the spreadsheet all the time, and we're getting close to the end here. And so I want to bring it up, and I want to try to do it in a way that if you're just listening, you can kind of pick up on what we're saying. However, if you go out to YouTube and watch, I am going to share my screen right here and show, this is the spreadsheet that I have up. So what I'm looking at right now is basically, it's a Google Sheets document. It's open with the link, which I'll put the link in the description on
and
YouTube.
It's pinned at the top of my Twitter. It's been there since I think January-ish or 20. I hope I put it to the public because I want people to use it. That's why it's there, and this is something I would be doing, whether it would, whether I was writing about it, whether I was tweeting about it. I did this first, but then I was like, why not share it with people, And that's why it's there. I want people to use it. I want them to have the right information. This stuff is confusing, and people who are, I won't even say supposed to cover it, because I wouldn't expect the media or the Pittsburgh media who's writing a gamer every day, who's trying to get the quote from the coach or the player. I wouldn't expect them to be this deep in the weeds. Now, Bill Brink was my favorite beat writer because me and him got this, and he was one of the only ones who really covered it, and understood it. But I don't get too upset with, the media who has trouble with it. I get upset whenever I try to help, and then they don't. They kind of either get defensive or just blow it off, and then just never update their article or never make a correction. But that's why it's here. It's because I think fans deserve to have good information that's correct and understandable, and nothing aggravates me more than someone will say, well, the Pirates right now have a zero payroll. They're projected for zero payroll for 2022. Well, that's just not true. Or the whole narrative last year of Trevor Bauer is going to make more than the Pirates. That's just not true, And so that's why I'm here.
So there are 7 sheets on this spreadsheet. We've got a 2022 projected payroll, a future commitments, a Rule 5, payroll 2021, 2021 projected payroll.
That would have just been older stuff.
Yeah. And then
that I just don't update.
So we've got 2021 CBT. What is the CBT?
Competitive balance tax. That's the official number that the union is gonna leak here in December. That is your luxury tax. That's whenever you say, okay, the Dodgers paid the luxury tax. That's the number that they're going off of. And it's calculated a little differently than cash, just straight cash. It's something like Gregor Polanco, who's on a 5-year deal for, $35 million. His yearly salary per annual average value for the CBT is $7 million. Doesn't matter if he was making $1 million in the first year, 11.5 in the last. His number for the average annual value for the CBT purposes is $7 million. It's now, of course, for someone like the Pirates, doesn't matter. They're getting nowhere near the tax of 210 or whatever it is, but I still track it because honestly, it just lets me know if I'm on the right track. Because I mean, what you have it open, I don't even have it open for 2021, but whenever I'll compare that whenever it comes out, it's usually always the AP always reports it, but I'll say, hey, I was close,
Mm-hmm.
I have it as far back as I have payrolls back as far as 2008, but I have good comparable numbers from like 2013, 14, 15 as far back, and I'm within 5%, give or take, on the official numbers for every year. So I kind of just use it as a measuring stick to let me know, okay, this I'm close, or I have a pretty good idea of where I'm at. That's why I track the average annual value, because that is what the league goes off of. That's the true number that people in the league care about.
Sure.
It includes benefits, it includes bonuses, it includes many different things. It's just not a salary. I mean, this is just a little note. It's fun, but if Jung Ho Gung hires an interpreter, that's included in the average annual in the competitive balance tax. If Mike Trout if it's written in Mike Trout's contract that he gets a hotel room on the road, that's included in the value of Mike Trout's contract.
So there's a lot of so it looks like right now, as far as what we have on this sheet, the biggest things that are current that we even know of, the 2022 projected, which is your projections on there, and with a lot of this that is known.
Yeah, all I do for that is I simply take what I view as to be the most likely. I keep it completely internal. I don't project, well, they're going to go out and sign Jose Quintana for $2 million. I don't project that until it happens. I see we got 40 guys here. What is the roster that makes the most sense? I take their arbitration estimates from trade rumors. I plug those in whenever they're available. I take the minor league numbers. Say that the player made X amount last year in minor league in the minimum. I put a little raise on it, plug that in. The big difference that you'll see about my numbers and anywhere else, I always include the minor league splits, because pre-arb players 0 to 3, they're typically always on a split contract. And that just means if they're in the majors, they're making one amount, but if they're in the minors, they're making a lesser amount.
Right. And
that's never reported. Very, very rarely is it reported. But I worked up the minimums are in the CBA. Someone like who just signed, like your Jack Suwinskis, they have the least. It's like $46,000, and it's on there. You could look at it. And
the 47 too is what's on there.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was. That's what it was brought up to.
Yeah, well, that's just a estimate on my part. The CBA now we don't have an official amount
that's
yet.
Right.
But for they
until
for the
December
last
1st. That's the amount.
that's simply my estimate. The CBA called for a COLA, cost of living adjustment, based on the Social Security raise for the year. I think it was 1.3% last year, and that's just what I used. But then the player who's on a second contract or more, they get a little higher. And then, of course, there's a major league minimum. But then if you're in the minors for a longer period, like say, you have 2 years of minor league service, or you've used 2 options. So you're kind of a minor league veteran almost. You get paid a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I have on good authority some amounts, that players, like someone like, I think it was Jeff Hartley, he was making about $200,000 in the minors. So a player gets sent down, they're down there for 10 days, they're paid at that rate. But if he comes back up, he's paid at the $550,000 rate. So you're making 2 amounts. But my payroll has that because, again, the competitive balance tax payroll includes those numbers. So no other source has that to start the year. It's always 26 men, but I figure if it ends at 40, why not include the 40 to start?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a lot. You're talking $1 million, $1.5 million, but it's still more accurate.
Right. So paired with that, there's Jake. Did you have something there?
No, I'm just listening. I'm trying to absorb as much of this as I can.
I could sit and talk about it for
right.
I mean, and there's little things that I try. If a player with X amount of service time is cut right before there's a certain date. It's like 16 days before spring training or the season. It's what's called termination pay. It's basically if you cut a veteran too close to the season, they get $100,000. That's included in payroll. Or someone like Troy Stokes Jr. last year, or he was on the start of 2021. If you're outrighted after a certain date, after the tender in December, if you're tendered a contract in December, that you are committed. That team is committing a contract to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, even though they cut and outrighted Troy Stokes Jr. after December 2nd last year, they still had to pay him
mm-hmm.
at his on a major league contract. So, that's included as a minor league salary. And that's the kind of thing that I kind of make my living on. Everyone can look up and say, well, Gregory Polanco made $11 million this year. That's easy. But it's the little details that I try and get out there to be as most accurate as I can.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that they don't MLB teams do not have to share any of this with anybody right now. And so this game is a lot of unknowns, and there's been a lot of people like you who've figured out a lot of things about it to get down to what is probably accurate. The one thing we don't know is how much money's actually coming in and how much money's available to spend. And I mean, there's just no way to know that sort of thing when you don't have it.
I'm an accountant. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. I'm an accountant by trade.
We didn't.
So yeah. I would love to be able to see the books.
So anyway, guys, so there is a view of this on the screen if you're on the YouTube where I'm kind of clicking through some of these pages to see, but it is really interesting, and it's worth a bookmark on your browser. And if you ever have, it's going to come up. You're going to think about it. You're going to say, how much is Chad Kuhl making to be this good or bad? You know what I mean? And it's on this sheet, guaranteed. And so, it's a really cool place. Like I said, I'll put the link in. I've put it in our show notes before. I'll put it out there again. I've tweeted it. So it's available. If you just go to his Twitter page, like he said, it's the pinned tweet up there.
And every player that comes into the system, every player, I will go and I will count their, like tonight, that's probably while it's Steelers game on in the background, I'll be counting Jose Quintana's service time. And I have their signing dates and I have their ages, and it all feeds into some formulas that tell me, hey, they're Rule 5 eligible after this year, they're minor league eligible after this year. And then I'll count all the service. And I'll show, okay, well, they'll have this much contractual control after this. It's like, how close were you paying attention to the Chase and Shreve drama? Everyone and their mom was saying Chase and Shreve will be a free agent. And the day he signed, I said, or the day he was recalled or selected, I said, he's not going to be a free agent. He doesn't have enough service. It's just as simple as using a calendar basically for a lot of it. And I'm not special in that I can count days on a calendar, but every ESPN, The Athletic, Post Gazette, everyone was saying, well, Chasen Shreve's going to be a free agent. I'm like, no, he's not. Look at my spreadsheet, guys. He is not. He's got a 5th year of arbitration. Now, of course, 5 years of arbitration isn't common, but he was technically eligible for arbitration. This would have been his 5th year if the Pirates kept him. But that's one of my favorite. I'll just go in. I'll bring up the transaction log for a player, and I calculate all the service myself. I'm not hopping on Fangraphs and looking. Heck, I have corrected issues on Fangraphs before.
That's funny.
Braxton or Michael Burrows. Everyone, you can go find an old Athletic article saying Michael Burrows was Rule 5 eligible for 2021, and it's for whatever reason it was like that for years. And I'm like, no, he's not. It's next year. And I had enough of it, and I said, hey, Fangraphs, fix this, and they did. I have a tweet. I can find it, and it's before and after. So I mean, those sites aren't always right, and nothing against them. I can dig deep enough in the Pirates that I can catch that. They're tracking all 30 teams, and I never could do that. But it's just basically knowing what to look for and knowing what to do and how to count. And if you're close enough in the weeds like me, I know that's how I can catch something like that.
So I noticed I'm on Baseball Reference a lot, and they have service time on there, and they have a date. This is his service time as of, and it's always January. So it looks like they do have some service time updated for
They
January
should at this
of
point
next year,
because your arbitration eligibility is out. So that's what that's based off of.
So even Chasen Shreve, when you looked at that last year, he was 5 point something, but that was as of January 21. So I went into that saying, was he on the roster enough to get there? Like, I didn't know. Actually, found the answer from your Twitter. So kudos there. But yeah.
I was on the warpath. Yesterday we didn't have power for a couple hours, so I'm just going through nothing to do. I'm just going through pictures, deleting some more. I have hundreds of screenshots of like CBA roles, and I found there's like 5 or 6 article snippets of Chasen Shreve, and I'm like, I probably look like a crazy person with like I'm a Chasen Shreve stalker. but I took pride in the fact that I had that right and no one else did.
So now, I'll ask you, as we're wrapping up here, I'll ask you this. Your plans, because you're into this, I mean, we've all, got that. Do you have aspirations of more than, being an accountant and doing this for fun?
What I would like is that if people thought Pittsburgh Pirates payroll, service, roles, that I would like to think of them to think of me first. Sure. And anything past that, I don't, whether it be to work for someone like Fangraphs or Baseball America doing this kind of thing, or I've always thought that a minor or major league in a front office would be really cool. Like, I genuinely enjoy this. This is a hobby. It's a passion. I could go into why I think it is. That's pretty long and boring, and we don't have time for it. But I do really enjoy it, and so I do think if I were doing it on a day-to-day basis, I probably would find real, some enjoyment out of that. But literally, I just replied to a comment to my story today. I don't think that I would ever want to move. I think that's something that I would have to do, and it could be any 30 teams. It's not like, well, the Pirates want you. It could be any 30 teams, and I'm not going to California to do this. And that's just not realistic. Or it's a very high pressure job, and I don't operate well under pressure. Or I assume that there would be pressure. If I misread that role, but no big deal. And I don't see that happening. Well, there would probably be accountability and pressure, and I don't know how well I would operate under that. So I've always kind of thought your dream job with no strings attached, that probably would be mine. But nothing in life comes without strings, So I just keep doing it for as long as I can. And honestly, I'm worried even just come January, I got kid number 2 on the way, and I don't know if it's just something I'm going to try my best to keep up with it. But like I said to you, it was either before I was on the air. It was before we were on the air. I was looking up posing Quintana. My daughter's like, "Get off your phone, Dad," and it just makes me feel bad, and it makes me feel awful. And so if I got a second kid and I'm trying to do both, and you'll often see me updating the service time and payroll at 11 o'clock or midnight, and that's because it's just when I have the time to do it. That's it's not like I'm a beat writer who can jump on the news right when it happens, because that's my job. It's just, this is just something I'm doing. So if I get around to writing an article a day later, or if I can update my spreadsheets the next day or that night at midnight, that's how I can do it. So I honestly am worried about being able to keep doing it. I'm going to try, because I know it's not a lot, but I know there's a contingent of fans who really do appreciate it. And I think that's cool, and if it's just that, and I've always said that I could write an article saying Bob Nutting sucks and he needs to spend more and the Pirates don't spend enough, and I would get more clicks and people, I would probably be a little bigger than I am, but I would rather do what I like to do and be right doing it. I would rather get fewer clicks counting service time than I would, just complaining about payroll. I would rather get fewer clicks having an article that says this is what payroll was, rather than getting more clicks and saying why I'm so mad that it was so low.
Yeah,
that's not me.
That's cool. How old's your daughter?
She will be 4 in February.
Good. I have a 7-year-old, and the second is almost 2. So yeah, it's. You'll be sitting at your computer when they're napping, when they're asleep.
She was on her nap yesterday, and the power went off. I was like, "Come on, this is time's like gold, and now there's nothing. The power's out."
That's good.
And that's why I'll stay up in all hours of the night, and I know it's bad for me, but it's the only time that no one's calling my name, whether it be my wife, my dog, my daughter, somebody.
That's good. All right, well, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, like I said, we're going to link all this stuff. This information is very interesting. It's all there, and it's 99% right, according to him, as far as we're concerned.
There's always something. And sometimes it's infuriating. Sometimes they don't even seem to follow their own rules. They're so confusing.
And then who knows? It may all get wrecked with the new CBA. So
I am scared to death of that. It's going to be so foreign that I won't be able to catch up. Yeah, I've spent many years harvesting this information.
Or maybe it's a salary cap, and then all the books are opened.
Well, the book, I don't know if the books would be. They still won't be open.
Well, but they have to be reported at that point. Am I right?
It might be even the amount, the salary cap would be known as. Right. So you could work backwards and say, well, this is the amount of revenue, because the salary cap is based on league revenue. I always think of it as BRI because it's basketball related income in basketball, but you take that, divide it by 30. It's kind of.
Yeah.
So you could work backwards and kind of figure it out, but not on a team by team basis.
Yeah.
I still don't think you're ever going to know what the revenue sharing amount is or anything like that. But I am anti-cap, so don't even get me into.
That's actually interesting. I didn't expect that. I've been.
You haven't seen that anywhere?
I haven't yet. I've been digging because I obviously used to make the comments that until there's a salary cap, the Pirates will never win, and then. As I've gotten older, I've kind of become anti-salary cap. And then in recent, maybe the last year, I've been kind of digging into it, saying man, because one of my biggest pet peeves is the amount of moves that are made, say, in the NFL. And I'm like, man, every year, I don't know who the heck plays for my favorite team in football. It's like you're watching college football again, with the exception of the quarterback. And so, it just goes, it goes to, if we think there's a lot of moves in baseball now, wait until we can just cut somebody and a player doesn't have to be paid. And I think that I'm also pro-player. And
that's how I view it. I view it as a labor issue.
Yeah, and I don't understand how a player can go through and get paid. He's the product. He should get the most money. And so I don't like limiting. And then I look at hockey, and I try to compare it, but, the money coming in is so different. The hockey salary cap is in the 80 millions, and the most you can pay a player is 16 million. And I keep saying that'll never fly in baseball. But of course the salary cap would be much higher in baseball. And so I just don't know. I like the idea that it's guaranteed money.
Well, you're not going backwards on that. That's not. I don't think that's ever. NFL is
Right.
not guaranteed, and
No,
I don't
they
think
could just
that's
cut
really
you and not
fair
have to
either.
pay you. It's not fair, and I just think that it should remain guaranteed money. And so, like, yeah, there's a lot of things, which is probably a discussion for another time, because I know that, we have a tendency here to ramble. So I say
I know we've been over an hour here, and I know I can be long-winded at points too, and I don't want to drag this out too long, but I definitely enjoyed this. So
yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and maybe this is something that happens again down the road when we have some financial questions that we need answers and some roster things to figure out. We'll bring Ethan back on, and so. Other than that, Jake, you have anything? Jake's been soaking this all in with a smile on his face. He's like,
I don't know, he doesn't say a lot ever from the episodes I've heard.
That's why I've said we have a tendency to ramble. I was being generous.
Right. No, it's just been interesting information, and just I don't have a whole lot of comments because this is the kind of stuff that I don't know a lot. I'm more of I've coached baseball for the past 10 years. And granted, it was the high school level. I've played college ball. I like to watch and react. So like the whole off season stuff, everything about the off season, this is a big one. I'm not real good with it. I'd rather watch games and say, I was expecting him to throw that fastball, and he went to the curveball one too many times. That's my kind of.
It's just different strokes for different folks. I would play Madden in the show growing up. I would simulate the season to get to the off season because that's just what I liked. It's always been what I've liked.
Yeah, and me and Josh's wife would call that playing the menus.
That's what they tell me all the time. I'm playing the menus.
I have notebooks that I could go pull out right now of written notes. I want this guy, his stats or his attributes. I guess I haven't played a video game in so long. His hit was this, and I need this, and his trades were always so much easier. You could go get whoever you wanted,
right?
But that's just all that's always how I've viewed it. I've always loved it, and I've made reference to it in articles I've written. This was always a funny story. It was someone who said, when my Madden, if something happened and I would lose my season or it would get deleted, it's like I lost 53 of my closest friends.
When we first got married, my wife saved her road to the show, which she played very, not a lot, saved it over top of my road to the show, which I was about 6 years deep. And 300 homers deep.
You had just gotten married, you said? That's cause for divorce.
It was fun. I was like, I think I remember being okay about that. And she's like, yeah, you were pretty upset, but it was not a yelling at me upset.
That's when I stopped playing though. I don't begrudge people who play video. That's when I grew up. But again, it's not like you can't as an adult, but I don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
But I spreadsheet all the time. That's a verb.
Right? Yeah, right. It just matters what we spend our time on. You got to have something, right?
Absolutely.
I'm more of a binge video gamer these days. Late night, Friday, Saturday nights. And other than that, it just doesn't happen very often. But, well, that's all we have for today. We are quite over an hour. Hope that it wasn't too much for everybody. You got a week to listen to it. You're fine. And really, you could turn it off if you
listen to it on 1.5.
Yeah, there you go. Then you're absolutely fine. So it's been fun, and we'll catch up with you next week. Not sure what we're going with next week, so we'll see. Obviously, we have some
not a lot to talk about now.
Not a lot to talk about. We've got Thanksgiving coming, all of that stuff. So don't be surprised if we make up for the length of this one with the lack of length on the next one. So. We will see. Until then, let's go Bucks. Jake, any let's go Bucks from you?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go Bucks.
Ethan, how about a let's go Bucks?
Let's go Bucks.